Okay, we are back up. I'm really sorry about that, guys. I have no idea what happened. My computer didn't crash. It looks like the feed just went down for some reason. So I'm probably going to end up uploading this via hard copy, and I'm probably going to end up doing it in two parts. So I do appreciate you guys being here for the live stream. I apologize for that going down. I will most likely upload the hard copy, which will be in two parts. Dan should be back down in a minute. He just decided to use the restroom while we were pausing here. Yeah, so I think we're good. Sorry about that, guys. I got it back up. I don't know what happened.
I don't know.
So I just briefed them. Hopefully people come back and join us. But basically is what I'm going to do is we'll continue the live stream, and then I'll just upload the hard copy in two parts.
Cool.
It'll be a little weird, but I have had to do this before, so
yeah,
it's not the end of the world.
All right.
I don't know what's happening with my computer, guys. If you guys are frustrated, I apologize. Trust me, I'm more frustrated.
Indeed.
Because I really don't know.
If you have a computer you'd like to give to Jared, he is accepting computers. They're very awesome.
Yeah, sort of. If they're nice, they just can't be worse than this, because
right.
otherwise it'll just make the problem even bigger. But
if anybody's giving away a Mac Pro, now would be the time.
Yeah. So, like I said, it was weird because where it went down to wasn't even the worst spot, because we'd kind of wrapped up the other stuff, and I said, "Well, we're doing pretty good on time. We got about an hour left. Is there anything that you want to talk about?"
Right. Yeah. Well, one of the things, because I might forget to say it later, but if anybody's interested in talking about faith things and they just don't have somebody they feel comfortable talking about it with, especially as it relates to Christianity, because that's what I know about. You know, you mentioned Buddhism earlier. If you go into other faith areas, I've very cursory knowledge. But if you want to talk about the Bible or Scripture or the authority or the faithfulness of the Scriptures, of who Jesus is, what the Holy Spirit is, why did I have a terrible experience in my Catholic church, what you're saying doesn't line up with what I've heard, all those things, like, that's what I love to talk about, and I get pretty pumped about it. And if you're willing to drive a little ways, or you just want to meet somewhere, I'm more than happy to even buy lunch. Like, I'm in White Bear, but I would even drive, to meet somebody, and even pay for lunch just to have that conversation.
Wow.
Because I want to honor that.
Careful if somebody's putting that out there, man.
if somebody's like truly, desiring to encounter Jesus, and they're just like, I just need somebody to talk to, that's worth, $15 to me.
Right.
That's like literally my main mission on earth. Like that's the mission that God gives the church. God is calling a people to himself. I'm actually preaching this Sunday. I have a lot of work to do, but like I usually don't preach about once every 3 months or so. So I'll be preaching, and I'm preaching on the church.
So is that like, so are you hoping to eventually one day lead a church? Like the whole thing? So is this like a stepping stone?
No. This is
just kind of part of your job.
My life has just been kind of like, do the next thing. Just following the call, so to speak, as like, where do I feel like God's leading me next? And it is interesting. Sometimes a call feels a little more mystical and a little more outside of yourself. Like going to seminary was not on my agenda necessarily. It wasn't like, oh, like that's part of my life trajectory. I finished college and then I was taking a year, just working at the first guitar store I worked at in Florida. And it just like at a certain point I was like, I just feel like I feel this compulsion to continue my theological education. What am I going to do with that? I have no idea. And I actually went for a master's. I started for a master's in worship because I got my bachelor's in worship, and I was like, this is all repeat. I don't want to do this. Then I was like, okay, a master's in theology, because I was like, maybe I want to teach, because I really love talking about this stuff. It's really engaging for me. And I feel like, and I've been told by many people, like, you can say it in such a way that's easily to understand. You can take a huge biblical like concept and break it down in such a way that's like, oh, that's it. Yeah. Cool. That's easy to access.
Yeah.
So I love doing that. Then I like had to write a thesis, and I got like literally 3 weeks into my thesis project, and I was like, no.
Really?
Like, this is terrible. I am not a researcher. That is not my thing. So at the same time, I was a college minister. I was a worship leader, so leading the music for for a church plant, which is basically a baby church. It only had been in existence in a couple years, and the pastor I was working with was like, "Hey, Lugo," he was South Chicago guy. "Lugo, when this is the worst South Chicago accent I've ever done. When you gonna go to your MDiv?" Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
that was
I was
terrible.
just overdoing it. And I was like, it was the first time that I felt like,
Hey, Lugo.
hey, Lugo, how you doing, brother? Yeah, I can't do it.
Hey, Lugo.
I've been gone from there for like 8 years, and I've totally lost it. But
You watch
regardless,
the Bears game?
he was the Bears.
You watch the Bears game?
Yeah, he was like, when are you going to switch to your MDiv? Basically, when are you going to do the pastoral stuff? And it was the first time, even after tons of friends had been like, hey, you should do this. It was the first time that I felt like, you know what? This feels right. This feels like the next step. Then I graduated, and then I started working at Guitar Center, and I just like worked at different places and ended up in this is my first actual full-time church job. I've been in White Bear for about 5 years at Community-Based Lutheran Church. Despite it being a Lutheran church, I've never been Lutheran. I've been Catholic, Baptist. I lived in a charismatic house community in Dinkytown for about 7 or 8 months, which was awesome.
What's a charismatic house?
Oh, a charismatic. Yeah, let's talk about the charismatic. So you may have heard of Catholics and Baptists. They're pretty popular. Even Lutherans, if you're in Minnesota and you haven't heard of a Lutheran, then hey, welcome to Minnesota. Charismatic is a sort of umbrella category for a Christian who believes that the gifts of the Holy Spirit are still in effect today. And the word charisma literally means gift. It's the word charis, the Greek word, is grace. So it's this grace gift that is given, and you can read about this in the Bible, in the book of Acts. So once you get to the New Testament, so the stories of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, the Gospels. Luke, the third Gospel writer, he wrote 2 volumes. Part 1 is the Gospel according to Luke, or the story of Jesus according to Luke. And the second one is the book of Acts, which is... it's called Acts because it's the Acts of the Apostles is how it's labeled, but really it should be probably more appropriate called the Acts of the Holy Spirit, like what the Holy Spirit's doing in the church. And what you find in the book of Acts is that something that was prophesied in the book of Joel happens, that the believers of Jesus are all gathered together in one place, and this is in Acts chapter 2, and they are praying and they are seeking God because Jesus had basically said, hey guys, I've risen from the dead now, but I'm going to send somebody else to you, so you just need to wait, and then you're going to go into Judea and Jerusalem and all the ends of the earth, and this is how you're going to spread the gospel, but you're going to wait until the Holy Spirit comes. And they're like, okay. So they go up into this place and they're praying, and it's called the upper room, which is probably just like upstairs in some house. And they're praying. And as they are praying, it says that there's like a sound, like a rushing wind, and these flames come on people like tongues, like fire. Just this like fire is appearing over them, and they all start to speak in different languages. And the crazy thing about that is, and part of what I love about the Bible is the more you know about it, the more you see that things tie together. What happens in Acts chapter 2 is it's like a callback and an undoing of what happens in Genesis, the very beginning of Scripture, chapter, I don't know, 5-ish, somewhere in the first 10 chapters or so, which is the Tower of Babel. In the Tower of Babel, there was one people, one language, and they were like, let's build a huge tower to make our name for ourselves and build ourselves up to God. And he's like, yeah, not so much. So he confuses all their language, and they're like, blah, we can't work together. I know, it's kind of a weird story. I'm not doing it justice. But what happens in Acts is the undoing of that, because God gives each person a different language, and then all the people who are gathered in Jerusalem, all the Pharisees, all the different people who are there for the Passover, for Pentecost, Pentecost feast, they are there, and they say, what the heck? These guys who are uneducated fishermen and these people are speaking all of our language, or Parthians and Medes, and we all understand them. What is happening? How is this going on? And this was a gift of tongues that was given to them. So the Apostle Peter goes on this long rant, And because they say, what does this mean? And he's like, well, a long time ago, da da da, and there's this Jesus, blah blah blah, and you killed him, and now he's raised from the dead. And they're like, what should we do? And he says, turn and believe in the gospel. And 3,000 people were baptized that day, and that was the birthplace of the church. And that's where the church started, was all these people coming to faith at one time.
That's where the Catholic Church started, right?
Well, the church. There was only one church. That was it.
I mean,
the church.
So before that, was it the temple?
Before that, it was Jews.
Right.
So now these are
So the temple.
So these are So these are now Messianic Jews. They're Jews that believe in Jesus,
and they're creating the new church, which is essentially the Catholic Church, right?
And they're
because the first pope was one of the 12 apostles, right?
Peter would be considered
the first pope,
the first sort of, and it's
the
interesting
guy who founded the Catholic Church or whatever.
Yeah, and it's hard because there's sort of some. We're overlaying future Peter Malark. We're overlaying future what we know about what happens in church history, and we're putting that on what happened at the very beginning. But at the very beginning, it was just like, wow, that was crazy. We all spoke different languages, and now we are starting to do things like there's people with gifts of like miraculous gifts of healing. And gifts of speaking in tongues and interpreting tongues. There's gifts of discernment. There are people who have like gifts of knowledge. They understand things that like nobody told them that. They just know it.
You think all those miracles by everyone, including the people who weren't Jesus, you think all those were 100% real and they actually happened?
Yeah, I think so.
How come we don't have that shit happen anymore then?
We do have that shit happen anymore. Just because you're not around, it doesn't mean it's not happening.
Well, but don't you think, especially with social media, if some guy was running around curing leprosy with his hands, don't you think we'd know about that?
Check out the movie, like for instance, Finger of God might be a good example. Not a lot happens in the States. Not a ton. A lot of things happening in third world countries.
Is that because this is Satan's country?
Well, it's fascinating. You know what's interesting is, no, I don't think that. But what I've found, the more that
this does seem like Babylon.
Yeah, there's interesting things that happen in scripture. Like Jesus is walking around, he's going places, he's healing people, he's doing all these things. And there's one place that he went, and I can't remember off the top of my head, but he goes there and it said like basically like he healed a couple people here and there, but he didn't do that much because basically because the people didn't have faith.
Oh yeah, I read that. He went to L.A.
Yeah, that was where it was. That was definitely it.
He took a long boat ride to L.A. He saw this place and he was like, "Fuck this, I'm out."
This is a dumpster fire.
He's seen all the silicone and he was like, "I'm all right. I'm out. These people are screwed. The only way this is gonna work, we got to time travel, go back about 2,000 years, and we got to hit the reset button
over again."
And then he showed up in Jerusalem and he was like, "Maybe I should have stayed in L.A.
Build another boat. I'm swamping this thing." So charismatics are people who still believe that those gifts that happened then still happen today and they're still available. There are plenty of other Christian denominations who kind of are cessationists, that they're like, those gifts were for then, they are not for now, and the Holy Spirit doesn't do those kind of things anymore. There are plenty of people in the middle, and a lot of churches are kind of like, sure, if it happens, great. We're not opposed to it, but we're also not seeking it out.
Sure.
So in a charismatic house community, which is what I lived in, which is the 705 community, in Dinkytown, there was 5 different like discipleship houses. People just wanted to get closer to Jesus. We spent time in prayer, spent time in praying for other people, spent time in worship through music, lots of music going on. And in that, so here's one story of something like super cool that most people would think like, oh, that could be an evidence of God. I went up to Grand Marais for a weekend to visit a friend, and while I was up there I had this crazy dream, and it was this a friend of mine, and she was painting and she was on a bridge and she had one of her friends there, and she was like obviously painting the painting like for him, like a gift, and then he like falls off the bridge and it was like he was pierced with light. And just like, and in my dream, like that's all that happened, but I knew like he died. That was wow. What I understood it as. And it like there was like 6 something about the number 6 like in my dream that was there, and then it was like going down this waterway and she's by this oak tree, and I was like, and I woke up just like stunned from this dream that was very powerful, and I was like, what was that? So I just wrote it all down because it was weird.
Right.
And then I went back to bed and didn't think anything of it because I'd had a bunch of dreams in the past, but that one, like, I woke up suddenly and wrote it all down. So that would have been Friday night, I think.
Right.
Monday night, we're at this in this prayer meeting, so I'm back home in the cities.
A couple days later.
Just a few days later, and we're getting into this time of prayer, and I've got my eyes closed, and I'm playing guitar and singing a little bit. And then I open my eyes and realize that a bunch of my friends who are there in that meeting are like consoling one of the gals in the room. And I was like, what's going on? Because apparently it was like, you know, when everybody knows something but you don't.
Right.
It was one of those situations. I was like, so
yeah.
What's happening?
Literally one of the worst feelings every human feels is being left out. FOMO.
Right. So sitting there and saying, so what's going on? So one of my friends says, for anybody in here who doesn't know, because there's probably about 15 people. For anybody who doesn't know, this friend of ours, Kate, she just over the weekend lost a really good friend of hers.
Oof, heavy.
And he was part of the Navy SEAL team helicopter that went down. So this would have been 2012.
No way.
Yeah. So he was a Minneapolis guy. So I was like, I had this dream that I wonder if it might mean something to you. And she's like, okay. So I tell the dream, and she's like, oh my gosh, like I painted a painting. Like he basically like commissioned a painting from me. I literally had painted it for him. His helicopter got shot down. So the falling and the pierced with light, he died. The one super important part was like after that happened and like was kind of going toward the tree, just this overwhelming, like the words, like he was saying, I'll be okay. Like, don't worry, I'll be okay.
Wow.
So I shared that with her. The number 6, it was Navy SEAL Team 6.
No shit.
Like all this stuff happened. And then later on, you know, her sister was like, oh, we were thinking about getting him planting a tree in his honor, and it was an oak tree.
No way.
So all this stuff lines up perfectly, and it happened within the context of prayer and faithfulness and in relationship with what I believe is the living God, and it was insane.
Wow. So that would be almost like a mini, not prophecy, but like,
yeah, I mean that would fall
because prophecies
into,
are in the future. This is almost like your.
There's different kinds of prophecy. There's forthtelling, and there's foretelling, which is telling the future, and there's forthtelling, which is telling what's true. So that would be more of a just like, well, here's something that's true.
That's wild, dude.
Yeah. So
that's super wild.
It is super wild.
That's crazy.
And it's things like that happen and that truly happen. People just don't hear about them.
Right.
But it's like, how do you fit that into and this is a genuine question. How does someone fit this into an atheistic framework? For me and my Christian faith work, I have a framework that already lays that out and says like, well, this works. This checks out because the things I know about God and how he operates, they make sense within that. Mm-hmm. So there's not like I don't have to change anything. And the more I've followed Jesus in my life and the more things that have happened, I've had prophetic word. I have in my life operated in that gift. That's how you would say operated in the gift of prophecy. Like it's hard to say I'm a prophet, but I have that prophetic gift, which is hearing from God for people. This happened with you. This happened with you. Yeah, this totally happened. Sunday morning this would have been maybe 2014 or so. I was at church and playing on the worship team. And at one point, the pastor was like, hey, we're just going to take some time here. And we're just going to take some time to pray and just ask God, who's somebody who needs to be reached out to? And I want you to just send that person a text message and just say, hey, man, I just was, just let them know you were thinking about them or God put them on your heart. So I texted you on a Sunday morning and then you called me back. And I was just like, hey, just thinking of you and praying and just hope you're doing okay, whatever. I don't remember what I wrote. But then you called me back and it was between services. So I stepped out and called back and you said, dude, it's crazy that you just texted me. I got the shit kicked out of me last night.
Wow.
And it was
I
when you
vaguely remember
and
this.
you got like jumped by 3 dudes.
I got jumped outside of the Triple Rock.
Yeah.
Yep.
And you're like, I got jumped by 3 dudes, and like I could take 2 dudes, but I can't take 3.
Dude, for real.
And I got my ass beat, and they broke my glasses.
Dude, this is a real conversation, almost verbatim. Your memory is immaculate.
Yeah.
Because I forgot about this until you started saying it. And I'm like, yeah.
And they broke my glasses, and it sucks, and whatever. So just thanks for reaching out. That's basically how it went. And I don't remember if I said it then, but I'll say it now. Like, I think God was watching over you. He knows you. He sees what's going on in your life, and he sees your heart, and he's not just going to like leave you. Like, he knows that you're his, and he claims you as his, and he loves you. And that's how he displayed his love for you that day. And that love that day is still the same love that he has for you today.
Right. That's heavy, dude.
Yeah.
That's heavy. It's cool though. It's heavy and it's cool, and it's not. That's the thing, is like, this is the version of Christianity that I've always known, which is not. It's the people who seem to ruin it. You know, it is.
They say church ministry would be great if it weren't for the people.
For real, because honestly, man, like, it's people that make it so just. And the modern day church is a literal institution that's been created surrounding these ideas, and it just bothers me because I see so many of the same things in the modern day church that directly seem like they're the exact same thing that Jesus rebelled against back then.
And
it just
with
bugs me. And that's why I have a hard time going to church. That's why I can't seem to settle on a church. I'll find a church, I'll dig it for like a year and a half, and then I'll see that pastor up there saying some crazy shit. And I'm like, I'm out, man. Like, I know that's not true. Like, I can feel it in my bones and in my heart. I don't need to read it in the Bible. I know what you're saying is definitely, and if it is true, then that's not the God that I'm down with. Like, that's just, it's bizarre. Let me ask you this.
Well, that's actually a really good segue and you would probably be interested in this, to the podcast I'm doing. So I have a podcast that we just started recently, and it's called the Grace People Podcast. And why that ties in so well with this is because my friend, who humorously, her name is Grace, she was on it. So the first week I had Joy, and the second week I had Grace. So that's fun. So you can look it up on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, whatever. Grace People Podcast, 3 words. Orange Bear. It's cute. So
we should pull it up.
So yeah, pull it up. So Grace talks
Hopefully it doesn't
about
crash the podcast again.
Yeah, right. Let's not do that. And there's a YouTube channel, but I don't know if you can.
What is it? Grace People Podcast?
Grace People Podcast.
Are you SEO'd and all that, so it should just pop up?
We'll find
out.
Is that it? Let's see.
Is that it?
That's it. Exploring grace in every corner of White Bear Lake, Minnesota.
Now I should just be able to share this, just like this, and we go, boom. Okay, there they can see it. Perfect.
Beautiful. There it is.
So, boom, Grace People Podcast.
Grace People Podcast. I got the samples for the music on Splice.
That's what it looks like, people. You got 2 episodes up?
Got 2 episodes.
You just said that?
Yeah, it's
Beautiful.
funny because...
Look how professional this looks. I'm so proud of you.
Thank you.
I'm so proud of you.
My friend Laura...
Apparently these reviews are incredibly important in iTunes. I don't know if this is still true, but I've heard this for a while. Getting people to actually put a review down here...
Yeah.
is dramatically important in the engine, in the algorithm or whatever.
We'll leave this up here and you can review it later. And I'll have to review yours so we can do that. So great.
We are actually launching soon.
Oh?
On the audio side. Yeah.
Excellent.
Like this week.
Good.
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
Okay. So Grace talks about some house churches, and this is all the podcast that dropped today is all about that. Grace talks about house churches, and she says essentially when you go to church on a Sunday, it's not what family does. A family does not get together unless you're going to a concert or to an event that you all want to be entertained. You generally don't go into a big room, sit down, face in one direction with 400 other people and watch some professional do something.
Right.
You will have family dinner instead, and everybody brings something and people contribute. And so she is doing this thing called the Missional Living Lab, which is just missionallavinglab.com. And it's all about people. It's house churches. It's doing church in a small group, and ideally, she says, still connected to a larger church, because you get resources, you get teaching, you get good stuff from a larger church, but you've got your group of people who you're basically doing family and doing life together and doing the faith thing together, and having an opportunity to bring your gifts into that mix, which I think is extremely valuable. All that to say, I think there are more ways to do church than most people are used to.
Well, doesn't it say in the Bible, like, you're at church as soon as like 2 or 3 of my followers gather.
Yeah,
something like that.
Jesus is talking about. Yeah, it's in a conversation about church discipline or just discipline in general in Matthew 18, where 2 or more are gathered in my name, there I am with you. Yeah, and so the question then is like, well, what do you do when you're together? And on our Instagram for our church, which is again Community of Grace Church, but Grace People MN is our Instagram, and on our YouTube, we do these things called Grace Gatherings. So we put these steps on our Instagram where you can just have conversations with people. You do some connect time, you read some scripture together, you talk about some things, you pray together, and it's something that you can do outside of the church building while still being rooted in the story of Jesus.
Interesting.
Because once you get away from Jesus, you're not a church anymore. You're just a bunch of people having conversation, which has its own merit, but it's not church.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question. Because we're talking about, because I asked, if they were all bona fide miracles and it wasn't just Jesus doing these miracles, if they are all bona fide miracles, how come we don't see them anymore? And you said, well, maybe we do, and blah, blah, blah. So we kind of talked about that. I'm interested if these things are happening and they're being explained away scientifically. Meaning, I've always held firm that creation is creation. It's a bad description in the Bible. But as we more understand science and we try to use the Big Bang and all these other things to describe it, that's us just literally learning how to read the blueprint. We're just figuring out how it was literally done in scientific terms. And I think any discrepancies are just poorly written and poorly translated versions, right? Like I've heard really smart people who are like literal scientists and Christians go through it line for line and show you, like, actually, if you read it this way, and especially if you go back and you look at what the original texts were written, like way back in the Torah, and how they've been changed through translation, they're like, if you read it this way, using the ancient words and the ancient translations, it actually makes a lot more sense if you understand the science and the original one. They actually line up more than the modern day English Bible. But I'm thinking, if these people exist now, I think it's very realistic, very possible that these miracles are being explained away by science and potentially just being rejected all out. So here's what my question is. Have you seen that show on Netflix, Messiah?
I've not.
Dude, it's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's the theory. Here's the idea of the show. There's a figure that shows up on Earth and starts going around speaking very much like Jesus did. My father, blah, 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 that kind of stuff. And he starts performing miracles, including like doing stuff with nature. And there's basically 3 types of people that react to him. There's people that think he's a fraud. There's people that think he's the Antichrist. And there's people that think he's the second coming of Christ. And it's set in modern day times now. And he's like of Arab descent. Middle Eastern. I don't know what the proper term is.
Palestinian, maybe?
I don't know if they actually get into his heritage, because his heritage is somewhat of a mystery in the show. But what I can say is that the CIA is looking at him as like an extremist and a terrorist. And then he's like going around trying to do something wild, right? And then there's people who literally, like, he'll show up somewhere and people show up and start worshiping him, and like then there's people that'll show up and write false god on the side of the building that he just appeared at. Like, so it's the whole idea of like, if this person were to show up, how would he be received? The show does not try to definitively say he is or isn't anything. They try their best to make it up to the viewer as if you were watching this in real life. Yeah. Like, what do you think? I love this show, dude. Great. There's one show out, or one season out, and I am like, hoping and praying that the Netflix gods
May the Messiah return.
for real though, like I want a second season of the Messiah, a second coming of the Messiah, because this show's so good. And it's not, I would be just as intrigued if I were an atheist, because again, the show is not trying to say he's real or fake or any of those things.
Just a good show.
It's saying this guy is coming across this way, and this, how would he be perceived if Jesus were to show up right now? Because, I mean, that's a big part of the Christian faith, right? Is waiting for the second coming, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so what if Jesus does show up? Because if he is not dressed in robes and he doesn't look like a white dude, right, with a bushy beard, right? Like in this show, he's got straight hair, he's clean shaven, and he looks like a small, soft-spoken, almost effeminate Arab dude. Like he's really soft spoken. He's got a higher pitched voice. Like he's not like a manly dude. Like there's nothing alpha about this guy. You know what I mean? Like it's all
omega.
It's all beta. Like soft. You know, like he's very docile, very gentle. I know. But like for real though, they did a great job of leaving it extremely ambiguous and open for interpretation, which is what would happen now. If Jesus were to come back now, would he even be received by half the people who believe in him?
That's why it's so hard. Like I try, it's funny to say this. I try to feel compassion for the Pharisees in the scripture when I read it, because it's just like, listen, if you were there and this is what you saw, you would be them. Like not you, but the general you. And
the reason they rejected him is because half of their sect, didn't believe there was ever going to be a Messiah in the flesh. Like that's part of their religion, is that God does not, I'm not coming in the flesh like this. If it is, it's going to be a false Messiah. So that's why they're still the chosen people, right?
That's why I think it's so,
because they're just following the original word, right? Yeah. Isn't that the whole, I mean, that's my understanding of it, is like the reason they're still the chosen people is because they're still following the original word and laws that God gave them. But it wasn't working for the rest of us, the Gentiles, so he sent down Jesus for the rest of us. Well, and that's why they rejected. This is my understanding from a Jew, not as a Jew, because I'm not a good Jew. Like, I'm not a real Jew. I'm just Jewish by blood.
You're Jewish.
I'm Jewish by blood. I'm not a Jew.
Not Jew, just Jewish.
But my point is, this is what he described to me. He goes, this is why, and then there's Messianic Jews that are still
rooted in the traditions of Jewish culture.
Correct. And Jewish tradition and the Jewish religion, but they also accept Jesus as the Messiah. And then you have like traditional Jews in all the different versions, Hasidic, Orthodox. Then you have your Messianic Jews, and then you have the Messianic Jews that converted and became what we now refer to as just Christians. Mm-hmm. And that's what his big thing was. That's what he was trying to describe to me, because he said something similar. He goes, no, you got to understand, like, they were just doing what they were told. And that's why they're still the chosen people. I was like, man. So do you know if that's true? Because I know you said you're like iffy on other religions, but this is based in Judaism. So
what's the question? Narrow down the question for me.
So again, the reason, because you said you try to have, like, you kind of feel bad for them, the Pharisees, because of their rejection of Christ. Because if you were there, and then I added to that,
it would have been the same in the same boat.
Yeah, and then I added to that, from some people I know, they said, well, yeah, and not only that, but in the original Torah, it's explicitly said, like, there's not going to be a Messiah in the flesh. Like, you already have everything you need as the Jewish people.
That I can't speak to, but
because I don't read Hebrew or the Torah, so I don't know if that's really in there. You know, I took him at his word. You know,
right? Well, the waiting for it was going to be, the expectation there was going to be a king like David, like somebody like David, who's going to be unify, and it's going to be this. The expectation was going to be this military leader like King David, who was the second king of Israel. So Saul was the first king. Not such a good king. Well, a great king, actually. Not such a great guy. Also went crazy. David, pretty good king, but really good dude. Man after God's own heart. He did some terrible things also. But the cool thing about David is that he always ran back to God. He's like, oh my gosh. So yeah, it turns out that I saw some woman bathing on the roof who happened to be the wife of one of my military leaders. So I slept with her, got her pregnant, and then hid it by killing him. I'm sorry, God. Psalm 51. So that's how
I
that
think I
went.
remember that story.
Yeah, it's a terrible story, but it just shows the humanity of it. But he kept running back to God, and he was a fantastic military leader and had lots of great conquests and set stuff up for Solomon to be rich and build a temple for God and establish, Jerusalem as it is.
Everyone plays a part.
Yep. So the Israelites are waiting, and especially after being taken into captivity over and over and over, Babylonian captivity, and then Roman captivity. So when Jesus shows up on the scene, once again, the Israelites are bound by somebody else. I mean, it's been Egypt, it's been bad. It's like, can we catch a freaking break?
Right.
Everybody keeps taking us over. So they're waiting for somebody to come in to deliver them. They're waiting for a deliverer, and they think this is going to be a strong military might, this power that's going to come and rescue us. Well, who shows up? Some guy who's like healing people.
Right, a pacifist who says, let the Romans continue to run everything and take from you.
Yeah, just do all, and it's just like, this is not the guy we were expecting. This obviously is not the Messiah.
And he didn't unite everyone. He divided people.
He did not come to. Yeah, it's...
and I'm not saying what he came to do. I'm saying what,
right.
That's just literally happened. He split the church in half. At a minimum in half.
Yeah, people, some responded positively. Some did not respond well. Some ignored it. Some remained undecided, which is pretty much exactly what still happens today.
Right.
But it was different than what people expected. And I think in the church, that's part of the reason why I think it's so important to celebrate the seasons of the church, and one of those seasons is Advent, and we are quickly approaching it. November 29th. This is the season leading up to Christmas. You're like, what? I thought Christmas was the season leading up to Christmas. That's where we play our Christmas music and we sing Christmas songs. Well, there's this season. It's 4 weeks long, and it's called Advent, and Advent literally means coming. So it's to celebrate the coming of Jesus, and it's considered the start of the church year. And for 4 weeks, churches that celebrate Advent read the prophecies from the Old Testament and read about and remember that about God's coming to the earth, and we're reminded that he has come. And the subtext there is like, he's coming, but he's also coming again. And I think if we get into this habit of believing in this historical figure of Jesus who literally died, literally rose again, literally ascended into heaven, and is literally coming back again, if we remember that story and we're brought into it, then maybe when that actually does happen, we'll be like, oh, we were expecting this. Instead of just being like, wait a second. All that happens on Christmas is we open presents. I was not waiting for somebody to come back from heaven. This is ridiculous.
The thing I think is interesting about that is like the fact that he was clearly not born in December, and they moved it as a brilliant marketing move to a pagan holiday, because people were already celebrating. They were having a hard time getting people to celebrate some other new thing for God. They didn't.
Not another holiday. I don't believe that.
In June.
Terrible time for holidays.
So they moved it to the winter solstice in a brilliant marketing move, because people were already in a celebratory mood. So when they converted, it was just it's a brilliant move. But I think it's interesting now that there's a whole season leading up to it, and it's like none of this happened at this relative time. And that's another thing, is like, how much does it matter when it's like time is so relative anyways. I hate the one I hate.
We could celebrate your birthday tomorrow.
We could,
and it wouldn't matter like if it was actually on your birthday or not.
I rarely actually celebrate my birthday on my birthday.
There you go.
I mean, there's
because you want to be like Jesus.
No, I want to party. I know why I'm too old to drink on Tuesdays. That's what it is.
What I think is weird is my birthday's on a Tuesday every year.
Oh, man. What if you were one of those people who was on, like, you had a leap year birthday?
Oh, my God. True story. I used to think that all midgets were born on leap day. Because they only had a birthday once every 4 years.
That's why they're so small.
That's why they were so small.
So you were clearly a child when you thought this.
Yes. I was today days old when I found out that wasn't true.
There's no way you thought that as an adult with a master's degree. No. It was actually last week, Jay. Just so you know.
I was doing some research, and turns out.
Well, we still got about 20 more minutes. Is there anything else you want to touch on before we go?
Let's talk about music. Oh, man.
Have I played you any? Have you heard any of the good stuff from recent that I'm working on? It's the same tracks I've been screwing around with since when we were at Guitar Center and I was writing a couple riffs.
I love that stuff. Are you still calling it the Whelming?
No, I had to change that.
What? Why?
Someone took it.
What?
Yep. Some
claim
Christian
that-
musician.
What a jerk. That was my idea.
Some female Christian musician put something out on iTunes, and I was like, you know what? I'm not going to dispute this, because I immediately went and looked it up, and I was like, well, she doesn't have it trademarked, and I was like, I'm not doing that to her. Like, she beat me to the punch. I've been writing this music for 3 years, and I still don't have it recorded or produced. She beat me to the punch. Okay, guess I need a new name, you know? So now I'm playing around with the rivalry. I still don't know if I want the in front of it or
rivalry?
Yeah.
It's like a chivalrous rivalry.
How do you spell it? That's the question.
The same.
So you just pronounce it differently?
Like Chicago, the windy city.
But
I just wanted to have an album called Live in Chicago, the windy city. And people would be like, is that Live in Chicago, the windy city? I'm like, no, I'm elitist.
You've heard of Skywind?
Chili?
No, Skywind, the band.
Oh, no.
Local band. You've never heard of them?
I haven't.
I'm good friends with those dudes, and it's Skywind, but they were always pronounced Skywind. Like, no one ever got it right. They were always so irritated with it. But yeah, the intro track is it's part of a new song I'm working on. I actually have one with vocals on it, with my buddy Jeremy singing on it. It's pretty good. I'll play it on the way out. I'll play it for you before you leave.
I'm looking forward to it.
What about you? What have you been up to?
Musically, I've been up to producing a little more. At the church, we have something called Grace People Studios, which is a studio space with production equipment. I just really have grown to love that. Using a lot of Logic is my jam. Using some Isotope plugins and stuff. But
that's what I'm
just trying to mostly doing worship music style stuff, church stuff. And for the purpose of mentoring, for giving students the opportunity to try something they wouldn't otherwise have the opportunity to do. Church music is really interesting. It's it's funny to say it this way, but in a lot of ways, church music is a creative sacrifice. It's a conscious decision to say, I'm going to create something, at least for congregational use, that is designed for the whole, for the range of people that could be in here to engage with, rather than something that is purely satisfying for myself.
People are confused by what he means. This is a very polite way of saying that a lot of Christian music sucks.
That's not what I said.
Is what he means is like metaphorically. That's not what he said. That's what I said, but that's definitely what he meant.
Yeah, there is a lot of great Christian music out there.
There is, but is what you're really saying is like, okay, maybe not literally, but like you can't go out there and write Metallica songs because you think it's cool and that's what Christian music needs. You've got a lot of people out there that don't like anything heavy or loud or obnoxious or progressive or articulate or well-written. You've got people that are 9 years old, well, maybe not literally 9, but you know what I mean?
But
all the way up to like
9.
89 years old. And everywhere in between, of all races, genders, upbringings. And so you're trying to basically, that's why so much Christian music sounds generic. It's literally done that way on purpose.
It's designed for a certain purpose.
It's congregation music.
But and the funny thing is, you can kind of say it about many things. It's like, well, from the outside, all metal music sounds the same. All punk music sounds from the outside.
True.
Because it's done for a certain purpose.
Exactly.
Like if I can't thrash to it, then it's not thrash music.
Right. Exactly. It's just the only difference is it's generic to a smaller group of people.
Right.
You're just making it generic for a larger group, not even a larger group, a larger, a more diverse sectionality of who's going to be listening. And again, it's live. So like, you can't like. I went to a Billy Graham concert when I was a kid. And they had a couple heavy bands. Heavy bands. It was at the Metrodome. This was like a stadium concert. Okay, the place was sold out.
Do you remember any of the bands who were there?
2 of them.
Living Sacrifice.
One of them.
Zao.
One of the heavy ones was a band called Tourniquet.
Oh, yeah.
It was one of the heaviest bands I've ever heard in my life.
Nice.
Seriously, still to this day, and we're not talking like death metal, because that's, in many respects, that's not actually heavier. It's just blastier for the musicians that might be listening. These guys were heavy. And then there was another band, which now I'm forgetting the name of, but they
Norma Jean.
Yes, I seen them.
Okay.
At my grandma's church, actually. They came and toured my grandma's church. My grandma loved it because her name is Norma Jean, so she was like, I thought it was really sweet, and I just I just thought it was so cute, and he named that band after his grandmother.
Wow.
Something like that, or his mom, or something.
And she's just drinking a fifth of whiskey.
But there was the name is escaping me. It's this huge band, but they weren't heavy. And then there was another.
Skillet?
No.
Okay, well, it's really not important who they were.
It's like the quintessential Christian band.
DC Talk.
Yes, that's exactly who it is. So it was DC Talk. They weren't the heavy band though. There was two heavy bands, Tourniquet and this other band. And my point is, it was so strange to go from like this high energy where I'm like literally into this headbanging. I'm like 11, you know, I'm still a metalhead already. I loved Metallica and Megadeth and all that. And then all of a sudden the music ends, and then out walks 90-year-old Billy Graham and does like a serious sermon. And I'm like out of breath. I'm sweating. And now I'm sitting there listening to this guy talk about God. Like, cool. But at the same time, read the room. Read
the room, dude.
But my point is not read the room for Billy.
Yeah.
Read the room for the musical director. Like, the real point people are here is to talk about God. I get it. You want to make it more engaging, bring some different types of music in to make it more comfortable for other people. But now the endorphins are completely out of whack. And like, I'm not listening to this dude. I'm waiting for the next band to come out.
Yeah.
So I get it.
Challenging.
You know, you don't want to make the music too engaging in church.
Yep. And then yet there are tons of people out there. The brilliant John Guerra, Guerra, his latest album, I love so much. I love his lyrics. There are plenty of artists who are doing amazing things. And if you want to hear, you know, that's all I can think of off the top of my head. But people are more than welcome to shoot me a message. I would love to get people connected with great music. Oh, you can look at me on Spotify, my playlists, Dan Antonio Lugo. Yeah. Find me on Spotify.
You did pretty well for a while on YouTube. You were doing tours and stuff, and you were posting videos. And
yeah, I did that. I did when I was in Orlando, I did like a Minnesota and Chicago thing. It was She Loves Me, She Loves Me Not sort of split that I had written and was like, all right, I'm going to tour with this. And then I never really recorded it. But I've got some stuff on SoundCloud, Dan Lugo Music. I just still love writing.
You got like a singer-songwriter vibe, and you're pretty good at it, man. Like you and I have always had an interesting debate as to who's the better guitar player.
You are.
I here's what I'll say is I'm definitely a better electric guitar player in the rock and metal world, sure. But when I watch you play acoustic guitar, I'm like, oh my God, dude, I got a lot to work on. Because it's different types, it's different styles. You know, it's like going, who's the better drummer? This guy in this death metal band or this jazz drummer?
Right.
It's like, dude, that's not fair. They play the same instrument, but they also don't play the same instrument.
Right. Yep, absolutely. Like I have this D'Angelico Premier Atlantic that I got used at a JC recently that I love. It just feels like butter. It's so amazing. And I don't, to some degree, I don't know what to do with it because it's an electric guitar. And I play acoustics. And I've got a Jeff Tweedy Martin 00DB that is just
Do you play country
awesome.
Guitar at all?
Not well.
Make that your bridge. I'm telling you that right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so your bridge between what you do on acoustic and an electric is learn the multi-fingering of the country guitar playing, and I'm telling you, it'll bridge the gap, and you'll take off running, and it'll make you a better musician. It'll make you a better guitar player, and it'll make you a better songwriter.
Fantastic.
Country music is some of the most underrated music on the planet. I don't like listening to it, but playing it is extremly challenging.
It's basically rap for people who don't have tall buildings.
I thought you were going to say it's basically rap for white people without teeth. That's what I thought you were going to say.
I think country music and rap are really similar. They both just talk about what they know.
Right? Yeah.
It's folk music.
It's dated. Yep.
It's urban and rural folk music.
No, that's exactly what it is. Yeah. Day-to-day lifestyle. This is what I'm going through. These are the things I'm dealing with, which is honestly same thing as Bruce Springsteen. That's, working in a factory. Do you know that guy never worked in a factory?
What?
That guy never did a day's hard labor in his life. I'm not exaggerating this. This is from his lips. He goes, yeah, but my dad did. And the music I wrote resonated with those people. So I just kind of took, and he was from a blue collar city, you know, and he's just like, so I just kind of, but he was a musician the whole time.
Was he born in the USA?
False. French. No, I'm just joking. I'm joking.
It's like, this is blowing my mind.
I tried to pick the most un-American country in the world, but still white. Like,
Springsteen.
France. I'm not a fan of the French.
Devastating. You were watching the video. You saw my eyes get really wide. Like, are you kidding me? Born in the USA of France.
USA is secretly a tiny town. Did you know? Check this out. Here's a fun fact. And then we got about 12 minutes. I'm going to tell you this silly little fun fact about America, which you probably already know, but the listeners might not. And then I want you to plug your stuff one more time, and anybody else's stuff that you want to plug that you mentioned earlier, and we'll just do a series of plugs at the end. Okay, so here's the fun fact about America. America was discovered by Spain, technically, but it was an Italian dude who discovered it.
Amerigo?
No,
Vespucci?
that's who it was named after.
Oh.
So Christopher Columbus discovered it, right? I mean, we all know that. But he was Italian, not Spanish, but he was hired by Spain, and they named the country after another Italian dude. Americo, whatever his name is. Yeah, something Spucci.
Amerigo.
It's so strange, though. It's so weird. Like, we're named after an Italian guy.
Yeah.
Who'd have thunk it?
Espresso.
You know what I mean? So you could. I'm just saying, man. Bruce Springsteen could have been French. Yeah. USA could be a weird town in some USA, in some French suburb
in Louisiana.
All right, let's wrap it up, dude. Plug what you got.
Plug what I got. Let's see. So I am Dan Lugo. You can find me on many social media outlets. Dan Lugo Music. So that would definitely be on, let's see, SoundCloud. You can find me on Instagram as well, Dan Lugo Music. You can find me on Twitter at New Worship Leader, and leader is Leadr, because you can only have 15 characters. So New Worship Leader. That's my worship stuff account. You'll just see a picture of a guitar with a hole in it.
That's your rap name?
My actual, yeah. What? Ticka. So I've got a picture of my seagull, which literally has a hole in the front of it because I've been playing it for so long.
I love that, by the way.
I love that guitar so much.
I love that you keep it. And you keep
beautiful
playing it with the hole in it.
Yes, it's my.
You showed
Willie
me that
Nelson
video
guitar.
of that singer-songwriter from years ago that did that to a guitar. It was either a seagull or it was a Takamine.
Yeah.
Remember who I'm talking about? And then you told me about him, and then you were like, "Remember that guy I told you about?" I was like, "No, yeah, okay." And you showed me it was like a Taylor magazine or somebody else's magazine, where they got famous guitar players to come in and take a picture of their guitar. And it was that guy who had the only thing remaining under his pick guard was
just the bracing.
The bracing to keep it but there was a hole at the top. There was a hole at the bottom.
I feel like that was Willie Nelson and Trigger.
No,
somebody else.
No, it was a singer-songwriter you were a fan of, and then
Newton Faulkner.
And then they took a picture of his guitar, and then a picture of him playing a Taylor. And then the whole thing was, if I was ever going to trade in my guitar, it would be for a Taylor. And the whole, it was like one of those 14-page magazines, high quality, hard copy almost. And they gave them to us for promos, and you were like, "This is the guy I was telling you about."
That's him.
Yeah,
I know things.
Old Guitar Center stories. What else you got to plug?
What else do we have to plug? My church is Community of Grace Lutheran Church in White Bear Lake. We are also online at so the website is gracepeople.church. If you just want to watch Sunday service, 9 or 10:30, I lead the 10:30 service, and it's gracepeople.live. The church also is on most social media platforms, Grace People MN. I have a podcast. It's called the Grace People Podcast. Do you sense a theme here?
Yeah.
It's all the same stuff. Grace People Podcast, where we explore grace in every corner of our community, White Bear Lake, Minnesota, and beyond. So we just talked about real estate a couple weeks ago. It was house churches today, a couple weeks. And then maybe the one after that are going to be about coffee. I love talking about coffee. So I'll plug some of my favorite coffee roasters.
If you have a vice, it's coffee.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. I don't know why whiskey and heroin are looked down upon by Christians who are guzzling coffee. It's just not fair. It's come on, dudes, be consistent. If you're just
or they eat a ton of bread,
call
which
it what it is.
Or they eat a ton of bread, which acts as an opioid as well.
This is my body. All of this is becoming my body. Let's see. Corner Coffee in Minneapolis, one of my favorite coffee roasters. Up Coffee Roasters, also in Minneapolis. and then one a little bit outside of town, Ox and Crow, is another roaster. And then I drink Anchor Coffee in White Bear. As far as, let's see, I mentioned my buddy Jose earlier, and the Irreverent podcast, Irreverent Radio, something. I just couldn't even find it, but it exists. And if you like Jared's flagrant personality and you like hearing about Jesus and all sorts of other random things, then Jose's probably like the two of us.
Okay.
Like mixed.
Okay.
Yeah. Except much less conservative in many thought. Anyway, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. That's a lot of it. And you can always just email me if anybody wants to just like be really old school and just email me.
Sure.
Dan@gracepeople.church.
That is probably actually the best way. Dan@gracepeople.church.
Just hit me up.
That's
I love talking to
to
people. If you have questions, if you are, if I said anything that confused you or offended you, or
we didn't get into enough,
and you want to hear a little bit more, or seriously, if you are like, hey, I'm interested in talking more about that, can we meet up for lunch? I'm game, and there's a good chance I will also treat you.
That's awesome.
So
that's super awesome, dude. Thank you again for doing this, man. Let's do this again.
This is great.
Now that we got kind of a lot of the backstory and people kind of know who we are a little bit more, next time you come on, we don't have to play catch up. We can just get into some more current stuff.
Sure.
We'll talk more music. I'd like to get into.
For sure.
I'd like to get into a lot of that stuff with you because we played together live.
Yeah.
We played on stage together.
Yeah.
I played drums for your church band one random day.
And you did excellently.
I would say it was a disaster, but I appreciate the compliment.
I thought it was very good.
Well, I'll tell you what, I had 2-3 days notice, and I don't know if I could have actually done any better.
I gave you the songs like 4 hours in advance. You came in like nailed the intro, Phil, and I was like, what is this? This is awesome.
Oh, man. No, it was a blast, and I appreciate you doing that. It gave me a lot of confidence, actually. Yeah, we got another couple minutes. It gave me a ton of confidence because shortly after that, I got my first jobber call, and it was also last minute. And they were like, hey, we need to finish our tour here. Actually, I don't even think it was my first jobber call now that I think about it. It was my first last minute jobber call where I was like, this seems irresponsible to accept this job. But I had done the thing with you like a week or two before that. And then I called my buddy Dano in LA, who was at the time playing bass for Billy Ray Cyrus. And I was like, dude, I need your advice, man. Like, here's the opportunity. It seems like a horrible idea. And he just said, do it. That's all he sent back was do it. Period. Not do it, no period, not do it, exclamation point. Do it, period.
That was it.
Nothing else. And I called him up and I was like, all right, I'll do it. And then I think I called you or texted you and I was like, hey, man, thanks for asking me to do the church thing because it's the only reason I actually have the confidence to accept this gig right now.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
It's pretty cool. All right, guys, thank you very much. You know where to follow me. Hit up the Patreon we launched. We are launching on all the audio platforms, I believe, this week. I should switch cameras so I'm talking into the camera.
Yeah.
This week.
I like looking at myself.
This week, we are launching on all the audio platforms, Spotify, iTunes, iHeartRadio, Stitcher. If I'm forgetting any, if you guys listen to a platform and I'm not on, get at me, put it in the comments, email me, message me, whatever, because we're trying to get on every single possible one of them. We launched the Patreon. I do a solo podcast now called Dirt and Darts. It's basically I drink a cup of coffee and smoke 2 cigarettes and just kind of, it's a solo thing. If you guys are part of the Patreon, you can jump in, ask me one-on-one questions. I let you guys know who the upcoming guests are. So if we have the opportunity to work in guest questions like in pauses, bathroom breaks, things like that, I'll try to work those in. There's a lot of stuff going on, guys. We're really excited. I also just launched the Extravaganza, which is me doing online gaming streaming. We did our first one last night. It was a ton of fun. We're trying to do this right, guys. So like, follow, subscribe, share, go to Patreon, give me your money, or don't.
Or do.
Or don't. I mean, hey.
Or do.
It's a free country, although
it costs money.
Although if I were in control, there'd be a $2.99 tax every month out of all your bank accounts, and it'd be going directly to my Patreon. Which means vote for Jared in 2024. All right, guys. I'm actually not gonna upload the hard copy in 2. I'm just gonna leave this up.
All right.
And I'm just gonna rename them part 1 and part 2. If there's any links you want me to share in here, put them. text them to me, and then I'm just going to copy and paste them, and we'll update this. But yeah, dude, let's do this again. This
Cool.
was a blast.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, guys.